asbestos. So it really only be 145.
Yeah, because we already paid that.
So I see.
Thank you.
It's just
Yeah, do you guys have that? Did you get that back? Yeah.
Sandy.
All right. Thank you everyone for coming. This is Tuesday, August 19th, 7 p.m. We are live and we're also recorded. And if we could have Councilman Sailors lead us in prayer and then follow with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father God, we come before you tonight, Lord, asking for your wisdom, your insight, and direction for the county, Miami County, having a Hawthorne residents. And ask and pray a blessing over everyone in the county in Jesus' name.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I did forget to say this is the Miami County Council meeting, so at the GAR room at the courthouse. So next on the agenda is the approval of previous minutes for July 15.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
One of us.
If there aren't any questions, please vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Great, thank you. Motion carried. Next on the agenda is items for council action, and we will separate these two EMA requests. The first one is EMA asking for additional appropriations of $2,288.40. And I believe Herb, you're here, right? Okay. The Peru Fire Department for $700, ice machine for $308.90. Ice machine filters, 2 of them for $39.20, and then the EMA materials reimbursement for $1,240.30. Do you have questions on this for Herb since he is here?
Materials reimbursement?
I'm sorry,
What materials reimbursement?
Herb, what materials was the question were reimbursed?
This 2,288. Good evening.
Good evening.
The asking for additional appropriations, what this is $2,288 of hazmat cleanup money that I've charged companies. So the reimbursement of the materials are cleaning materials. We have a hazmat trailer that we use carry around. So the materials that we used, and also on the cleanups, we can charge for the fire departments when they come to help as well. So any car wreck, things like that, we can charge for their apparatus, and then that money can be transferred to them as well. So this is money that I've charged companies, semi hauling companies that have had accidents here in this county. So I've got the money from that into my non-reverting fund. Just wanting to transfer that money out of my non-reverting fund so that I can pay the fire departments, restock all my cleaning materials.
Thank you. Any other questions for her? And this is to approve for the request to advertise, correct? Because we haven't advertised for this for appropriations. Yeah.
Motion to approve for advertising.
Second.
Right. Any further questions for her? If not, please vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Great, motion carried. Next on the agenda is EMA asking for additional appropriations of $15,000 for the shortfall in 2025 budget. So probably go ahead and just explain.
Okay. Last couple months, I've been watching my budget very, very closely. I did not get to do my budget last year. I came in between. So the previous director had set the budget for this year. we have a volunteer group that we go out on calls for hazmat cleanups. We sit on trees that are down, power lines that are down, car wrecks. We help the police department. And we've made more runs in the first 6 months of this year than they did in the last year and a half before I took over. Which in turn, I went back through all the budgets clear back to 2021. The only budget that he increased was his fuel budget by $3,000. So all of my budgets are basically gone after next month. My fuel budget, my utilities for the EMA, there was never an increase, even though utilities increased their prices. And I only added one thing to the utilities, was a cable bill, a direct TV bill, so that way we could get weather and news in the office. So
And again, this is just to advertise we're voting to advertise for appropriations.
Where's that appropriation coming from?
Stephen County General.
Okay, so we're gonna just downspend county general then. That's
Mhm.
what the request is.
I make a motion.
Okay, so the second,
Advertising.
So how did you come up with the $15,000 then?
Commissioner said to just ask for that amount. That way it would cover all of my budgets.
So we really don't know what the number is then?
And one of the other things with my budget, my repairs and maintenance budget,
$10,000?
yes,
Okay.
that covers my vehicles, the buildings, and all of the grounds around the EMA, which in turn that buys toilet paper, paper towel, light bulbs, door locks, any extra keys that I need, things like that for the buildings. My repairs budget for my vehicles, there's $1,400 left in this account, and one of my newer vehicles broke down, and it is going to cost more than $1,400 in parts to fix it.
So the newer vehicle
So-
is not under warranty then?
No,
That's a
So-
one you got from REMC.
no, that was one of the cars that were already at the EMA. So that car is going to sit until next year. That way,
Have you gotten your new cars yet? That you
one
approved
of them,
earlier?
the other one's getting built right now. Yes,
Trucks, right?
went and picked it up today, actually.
Trucks.
Yes. So,
Are those vehicles take home cars or no?
no,
No.
a couple, there's a few of them that are. There's a couple cars in the south and a couple cars in the north part of the county. The rest of the people that live around this area leave them up in the garage. That way they're inside.
And that's not personal use. That's
No, that is just strictly for calls.
So you had a $9,000 fuel budget, so you burnt through $9,000 in fuel already then?
That budget is down to, my fuel budget is down to $1,599.
So is all this spend then because of the volunteer service that got reenacted then? Is that basically what's happened
Yes,
Okay.
the volume of calls that we've gone on.
from the volunteer service?
Yes,
And that is a required service, or that's just a service that the county provides as a nice to have?
yes, just a service the county.
It's a nice to have. Okay.
Yes,
I would like to see some more clarification on the 15,000, exactly how that's going to be allocated. Just my personal viewpoint.
Okay, so we have
It
until
seems-
next month
yeah.
before we vote on it.
Okay.
So we can still advertise advertise for appropriations,
Mhm.
but yes, if you could give us a few more details, that would be great.
absolutely.
Okay,
To be honest with you, I was not thinking we were talking about this tonight. So I thought this was next meeting.
yeah,
Does this 15,000 cover your fuel?
It covers everything,
Your
yes.
fuel's
The
involved in that?
fuel, the utilities, the repairs and maintenance budget. Yeah, all of that.
so Dick, Herb will give us some more information on where he came up with 15,000. for our next month's meeting.
Yeah.
So tonight we just need to advertise or vote on request to advertise.
With one instance, with my fuel budget, I have an appropriation of $9,000 for the year. I broke it down into month, and $750 a month is what I'm allotted for fuel. That fuel is, depending on the volume of calls, about $1,000 a month. So I'm $250 over on that one. And my repairs and maintenance budget, having $10,000 to fix everything at the EMA, that gives me $833 a month, and I've been spending $1,303 on the average to repair vehicles, and that includes oil changes, windshield wipers, wiper fluid, anything that the cars need, tires.
How many vehicles do you have right now?
At the moment, 11, which those will be now that the trucks are getting done, then that will drop by 3.
And it's great that you have really increased your volunteer group. So you have a good, how many volunteers?
At the moment, we're at 9.
That's,
We lost 2
Fantastic.
because of Jody and her husband leaving,
oh,
my deputy and her husband
Right.
leaving. But we have 2 more in the works right now. We're waiting on background checks to come back.
great job on that. Yeah. But it also, like I said, increases your budget.
Yes, unfortunately.
Do I have a motion to approve the request to advertise?
Motion to advertise.
I'm sorry.
Motion to advertise.
Yes. Second. Great. Any other questions for her? And, if not, please vote.
Aye.
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 Motion carried.
Thanks, Herb.
Excellent.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, next on the agenda for council action is Ori Roser. This is for the planning and zoning fees chart approval.
Like, which part am I doing today? Out here. You could play with it. Sure. You got it. You need another one?
Doesn't matter. You can
It's the same thing you had Monday.
Okay.
You do need a second one.
Thank you.
Okay, so tonight, this kind of moved along faster than I thought, which is exciting, but we do have, as we started to enter into budget season, this is the time of year that Planning Commission looks at our fee schedule so that we are not going 21 years without updating it like we have done in the past. So fee committee looked at our fee schedule and it was passed by Planning Commission at their meeting last week. And then it was passed by the commissioners on Monday. So looking at our 2026 schedule, we did have a few changes in here. You'll see on the residential side, which is your blue section here on the first page, that we did break carports and prefab sheds out and lean-tos out as separate permit costs. We were finding that we were charging a very high amount for those, and they have very few inspections. So we were trying to give people a little bit of a break. We couldn't really justify the prices that we were charging originally. So the committee elected to put $75 for carports, lean-tos, and prefab sheds without electric, then $125 if they do have electric that they're going to put into them. Most of those structures are just going to be brought onto the property. They're already built, like what Homestead Barns has. So very few inspections there. As you roll into page 2, we did not have any changes on commercial, ag, solar, or wind. We do have a few changes in our miscellaneous fees, the purple section there. We did increase our appeal of our administrative decisions from $50 to $185. Those work very similar to a variance. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. Adjacent neighbors are alerted. sometimes, and then there is a newspaper ad that has to be put in the paper as well. So a lot of the time we didn't feel like we were covering our costs well, so increase that. We did put in a fee for a petition for rezoning. We did not have that in there originally, so that's a new one of $185. That's another one that has to go before Plan Commission, public notices, lots of work in that. And then we did put in a petition for the vacation of a plat or a public way of $185. That's kind of the commissioner's work that I get to do for them. So they'll be doing that here soon. And then on the last page, we just cleaned up some of our miscellaneous administrative fees. On the zoning compliance letter, we originally had that as like an hourly rate, and it was too hard to try to guess how many hours that we were spending doing those. So we did implement a $25 per parcel plus a 10 cent per page copying fee. We did add a zoning verification letter. Those are very similar and different items as well from a zoning compliance and a zoning verification. That would be $100 per parcel. And then we did take out one of our research fees that we weren't using at all. So those were the changes that we decided to make this year.
So there was some discussion at Plan Commission, you know, the purpose of the fee is to try to cover the services, not to generate revenue for the county. We do not even come close to covering the costs of what it costs us to zoning. So that's why we kind of do the annual review to make sure that those are in line so that we're not overcharging or also undercharging for the services that are asked for out of the office.
What's the decks and porches? So are you just doing any square foot now? Because it says 120 greater than
Yeah,
before.
I believe that was a typo in there. I don't know why it said that before. And I hadn't noticed it until someone asked about it just recently. And I looked at our ordinance and we have no stipulation on what size the deck or porch has to be. It's just that any deck or porch would need a permit.
That's how it is now.
Mhm.
And then what was the sheds, the carports, and the lean-tos being charged under before?
Yeah, those were just as accessory structures or new construction, depending. So the 15 cents per square foot, which has the $100 minimum, plus then $1 for every $1,000 of your estimated cost. We had someone that just recently got a carport, and it was like $300 for a permit, and there's not enough in that permit to justify the costs inspection wise.
I agree. And then my last question is for the verification letters, and we're doing 10 cents per page. How many pages on average are those compliance letters?
Typically, we don't even get into that 10-cent copying fee because we are electronic now. But I mean, we can get anywhere between 15, 20 pages typically sometimes on those. They're oftentimes asking for any records of any open code violations, any permits that are outstanding, certificate of occupancies, you name it.
Most of it's like title search and stuff like
Correct.
that. It's not normally it's not people coming off the street and asking for that. It's normally a business transaction.
Or developers wanting to move something in the county.
Any other questions for Corey?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah, okay, thank you. If there aren't any other questions, please vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay. Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so it's 4-3, so. One,
Oh,
2,
sorry,
3.
can't count.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, that's good. Thank you.
So we have a resolution then for you.
Okay.
And we'll get that adjusted. And also,
Come back on that.
yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
right,
I still got one more thing on the agenda.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I gonna add to our council action, I put it under council committee. And it should be, this is the resolution for encumbrances for 2024, 2025. It needs to go under council action. So this is something we normally do every March. We're just a little late this year. This is a resolution of the Miami County Council encumbering 2024 funds for the 2025 budget year. The total to encumber from 2024 to 2025 was $3,037,811.31. which included payroll accrued at the end of 2024, but paid in 2025. So I need a motion to.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, great. Thank you. So this, do I need to do anything else? I know we've got the resolution and I will. So if we could vote, yes, please. If there's any other questions, no. No. Okay,
Aye.
please vote aye.
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 Aye, thank you guys. Sorry about that. Okay. Now, next on the agenda is appropriations and transfer. We voted on this last month, to advertise, and so now we're asking to vote on this. The employee benefits of $6,000 for Jody's payout and the new employee to overlap for 1 year for training.
1 week for training.
Pardon me.
1 week for training.
What did I say? 1 year?
Yes.
Oh boy,
That's a
1
lot of
week for training. Yeah, wow. All right.
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions on that? If not, please vote.
Aye.
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 Great, thank you. Motion carried. Next is the demolition of Grissom Inn, 177,000 from seeded to unsafe building funds. We voted last month for advertising appropriation. Now this month, we need to approve the appropriations.
Yep. So I sent out a list to the council. I believe there were 12 bids that came in for that, something 11, 12-ish bids, something like that, that came in. So it was around 144,000 for the demolition, and then 30. The balance in is for the asbestos, which has already occurred on that. We've been trying to get this cleaned up for quite some time. I believe our budget is $45,000 ish for unsafe buildings. So obviously there is not enough in there to cover this, along with all the other unsafe building cases that we have. So we were informed by economic development this is holding up some projects out there, which is why the request is being made to pay for this out of economic development funds, to basically transfer them out of economic development to the unsafe building fund. So
When would the construct or the demolition begin? Is it going to be pretty soon?
I've still got to finalize a contract with the Denny Excavating, and then we have to get notice from or to and from IDEM, letting us know that we're good to go.
the asbestos removal, has it been completed yet?
It's been
Yeah,
completed.
the asbestos is done. So all the intentions are to try to get it down by the end of the year.
Where did those funds come from? The asbestos.
What happens if we demolish it? What happens to the property then?
Yep. So when we do this, there is a lien that's put on the property. Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong. There's a lien that's placed on the property for it. At the time of transfer, in order to transfer the property, they would have to pay off that lien.
So
So
it could be sold or what?
it could be sold. Mark, you're better at this than I am.
I think it goes on as like a special assessment on the property, and so if it's sold, then that has to be is paid as part of that. But it also means that if it's not paid, then it's collected like taxes. So if it's not paid, then it goes to tax sale.
Okay, so when it goes to tax sale, they got to pay delinquent taxes plus the lien
Yes,
that's on there. Okay.
they have to pay off taxes and assessments on property for.
Now, where did the asbestos get paid from?
The current unsafe building fund. So
Okay.
in this transfer, we're asking to basically transfer that amount.
Put it back
over.
in.
Yes,
So that's,
right.
so that's going back in.
Right,
And
and we
then,
had to do that, or else we would have lost our spot, and it would have not been able to get done by the.
and then so so it's 144 for the demolition. 33 is going back to the asbestos. So is it 177 going towards that property, or is it just
Yes.
145 or 144?
It'd be the 177.
It's the 177.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that's it's coming from.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And does anybody know what the selling price when they sold that property?
150. That's what it says on
Yeah,
GIS.
I believe the last time we looked as well, there is a reverse mortgage on the property as well, which has complicated this process quite a bit. So we have, just to give you a background, we've worked on this for over a year. There was even the county even had to hire a private investigator to go down and serve this person. Their address is in Florida. We've tried to locate them with a private investigator. We've not been able to locate this individual. So.
I think for the most recent unsafe building order, we have been able to get service by certified mail. a few times, but then they stopped accepting it. So
Oh.
their property owner has no interest, I think, in doing anything with this property.
What if they do? What if they do have interest? What if we do all this and then they have interest? They pay their back taxes, and so the county's going to be out 177,000.
Well, the only way the county is out money is, I think, if it goes to commissioner sale, which is if it doesn't get sold at tax sale. So if they want to do anything with the property, our special assessment still stays on it. They won't be able to transfer it, and if they don't pay it as part of their property taxes, then it goes through the tax sale and commissioner sale process.
Is that common?
For the amount of the mortgage on it and this, largest demolition that I think the county will probably do in a long time. I would expect them not to pay it. So I doubt they want to do anything with this property.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have driven by it
Well, it's horrible.
in the last
Yeah,
couple
I'm not
months. This
disagreeing
is
that it needs
literally
to get torn down. I'm
yeah.
not disagreeing that.
Yeah.
I'm just what I'm worried about is to make sure that the county, because it's whatever is going to go there. And we said this in email, is going to go to a TIF, and the county's not going to see it. And I understand that they're going to get the 177 back, but if apartments or whatever that they plan on going there, it's just going to stay in the TIF. And I just want to make sure that the taxpayer for the rest of the county is going to have their money secured.
Yep.
And not
Yeah,
wasted.
The best solution is that, the value of the area around it goes up and somebody sees that and is willing to pay off this debt and the back taxes on it and build something new on it. That's the best case scenario for us. The worst case scenario is that it ends up going to commissioner sale, at which point everybody
loses.
So.
Could it possibly end up in like a sheriff sale?
Well, the worst case is a commissioner sale.
If it goes through sheriff's sale, tax and special assessments also have to be paid on it. I don't anticipate that process being done either because of the amount that we're talking about. But best case scenario, somebody sees here's a great property that we could build on and is willing to pay it.
Yeah, so basically after this, the new asking price for the property is going to be this plus the taxes, if that makes sense.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Right. Any further questions? If not, please vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is request for audience, Baker Tilly, on the 5-year plan.
Good evening. I'm Paige Sansone with Baker Tilly. We have prepared a 5-year financial plan for the county, and I'm going to give you a very high-level overview. This is a very lengthy report, so in the interest of time, I will just be touching on a very high-level portion of it. So I'm going to start on page 1. I'm not going to read this to you word for word. I'm just going to summarize it. So the first part of this report is we talk about the legislative changes that just passed in the General Assembly. And the big piece of that was property tax relief. So the legislation is providing additional homestead deductions and credits. In addition to that, it's providing deductions for 2% properties, which is ag land, residential rental properties, and long-term care facilities. We've not had those in the past, so these are brand new deductions. It also exempts new business personal property from taxation if it meets a certain limit. But all of that to say is that it's either going to reduce your taxable net assessed value or significantly slow the growth. Because really what it's the whole idea behind this legislation is to kind of limit the growth on assessed values, because that's the reason why taxpayers are paying more on their tax bills, is because the value of property has increased. You'll see in this report that your tax rate has actually gone down over the last 5 years. So the issue with having taxable value or net assessed value that doesn't increase as much is it can drive up property tax rates. And it can also drive up your circuit breaker losses. So meaning people can get more credits on their tax bill. So although the value of people's properties will not increase as much or maybe even decline, the tax rate may increase because there's an inverse relationship. As you have property values go down, tax rates go up and circuit breaker losses go up as well. I'll talk more about that as we go through this. So on page number 2, another item that came out of the legislation is we are limited to how much the property tax can grow in 2026. So if you remember, the legislature limited our property tax growth at 4% in 24, 4% in 25, and now also 26 of 4%. Had they not limited that growth, we would have seen a 5.6% increase of your property tax levy. So that is a limitation that we continue to have here. Now, after 2026, it remains to be seen because supposedly it's going to go back to where the levy growth is based on the economy. And it's a 6-year average of non-farm personal income, and we would expect it to be around the 5% range. But the legislature limited it the last 3 years. There's nothing to say they won't limit it again. Another item we need to talk about is how it impacts the county. So we do have very preliminary estimates as to how much revenue you will not collect because of Senate Enrolled Act 1. And that amount is $500,000 starting in 2026. So you will have $500,000 less than what is expected, than what we expected we would have because of Senate Enrolled Act 1. And where this is coming from mostly is the credits. So taxpayers will get more credits on their tax bills, which will reduce their tax liability, but that means it will also reduce the property tax levy that you receive as a county unit. Another big change has to do with the local income tax. The structure is going to completely change starting in 2028. So right now, this county has certified shares, public safety, which includes your PSAP, your dispatch portion of the local income tax, lit economic development. You also have a lit special purpose. All of those except for the lit special purpose will expire at the end of 2027. So you will not be receiving those income taxes by the time we get to 2027, the end of 2027. The lit special purpose will continue. Now, what is in its place is this. We have a new structure, and this would be for implementation in 2028. That new structure will allow the county council to adopt a county services local income tax with a maximum rate of 1.2%. You can also adopt a fire protection and EMS local income tax. It would not necessarily go to the county unit, though. It goes to fire districts, territories, municipal fire departments, and if you choose, to volunteer fire departments and township fire departments. You will also have the authority to adopt a income tax for municipalities that have less than 3,500 population. So you'll be responsible for adopting those income taxes. What you won't be responsible for adopting is an income tax for municipalities that have at least 3,500 population. They'll be able to adopt their own local income tax at 1.2%. We also are going to have different tax bases. This is going to be very, very different. So right now, your local income taxes are applied to the adjusted gross income of everyone that lives within this county. Under the new structure, I could live in the city and pay a different tax rate for local income tax than those living outside the city. The reason why is because the city's local income tax rate will just be based on the adjusted gross income of those people living within the city. And then these other things, fire protection and EMS, that's countywide. Like some of these are countywide and some of them will have adjustments. So that's very, very different. But I can tell you this, that no single taxpayer will pay more than 2.9% in local income tax. That's how the statute's written. So again, it's going to be incumbent on you, the county council, to make sure that in every area of the county, no single taxpayer is paying more than 2.9%. And if you add all these rates up that are on page 2 at the bottom, they actually add up to 3%. So that just adds another challenge to it. One of these rates, isn't going to be able to go to the max.
So the municipality is a city or town.
Yes.
It is not a township, right?
No.
Or does it include townships?
No, it doesn't. That's the non-municipal piece. The non-municipal that you can also adopt, and I skipped over that, thank you, is for townships, libraries, and it could be for a solid waste district if you wanted it to be, but it's mostly for townships and libraries. So that's another one you would also be have the authority to adopt. So very, very different. If you go to page 3, we calculated 3 different scenarios. If you adopted your county services local income tax rate at a 0.9%, a 1%, and a 1.2%. So we have a comparison here on each of these boxes. It's the same. For 2025, the actual is 7.7 million. This is just for your county unit, not countywide. So just for the county unit, you get lit certified shares of about 2.2 million that go into the general fund. We do have the 2026 estimates right now. They're not certified, they're not final, but they'll probably be pretty close to this unless you all make any changes. 2.3 million, so it did go up about 100,000. Lit public safety, which includes the PSAP portion. So you've got part of it going to lit public safety and part of it going to your lit PSAP fund. That's about 1.7 million. And then lit economic development for 2026, it'll be around 4 million. So you get 8.1 million. If you adopted 0.9%, you would only get 7.3 million. So that's less than what you're getting now. If you adopt 1%, that would be about 8.1. It's similar to what you're getting now. If you go all the way up to the maximum of 1.2%, you should be able to collect about 9.75 or 9.76 million, which is more. But when we get to the cash flows, we use the 1.2 just to see what it would look like. And it looks like you're going to need that. But this is all decisions you can make in 2027. You cannot adopt this any earlier than July 1st of 2027.
And that's assuming the General Assembly doesn't mess with
Yes.
this between now and then.
Yes, because we're hearing chatter that they could tweak these things. I don't know, who knows what they could do, but yes, this is what we know today. So things could change. Just letting you know what's on the horizon. Page number 4 is what you have today, if you're curious. So this county has a total local income tax rate of 2.54%, and that's made up of certified shares of 0.59%, public safety 0.38%, which again includes the PSAP, the dispatch, economic development 0.95%. So those are your expenditure lits, and that totals to 1.92%. You also have a property tax relief local income tax, which is good because what that serves to do is lower the amount of property tax revenue that you lose to circuit breaker credits. But unfortunately, that one is going to expire at the end of 2027 also. So that's why in this report, we're seeing your circuit breaker credits almost double. So there's nothing to replace that in the new structure. Your special purpose, I think it was for a jail, is 2.25%. That was special legislation that was passed just for your county. That will remain, thankfully. So that's what makes up the 2.54%. And then at the bottom of page 4, we just kind of put, historically, you've been getting some increases there in your local income tax. You did adopt some additional local income tax for dispatch starting in 2024. So there was a jump up there. And thankfully, you are getting a little bit of an increase in 2026. We expected some increase, so it didn't go down. And we've worked that into this report. So moving on to page number 5, I want to talk more about circuit breaker credits and how they impact your property tax revenue. So right now, as we sit here in 2025, you don't collect about 8.5% of what you levy. So you levy about, let's see, 9.1 million, but you only collect, or you're only going to collect 8.4 because the remaining amount is returned to taxpayers in the form of credits on the tax bills. They're, the full tax liability isn't getting paid because of these credits. So if you look at the chart at the bottom of page 5, you can see that if you look at 2025, you're levying the 8.4 million plus the 777,000, but that 777,000 is not collected from the taxpayers because those are credits on the tax bill. Now we move to 2026, and preliminary estimates show that in addition to about 800,000 that you wouldn't collect ordinarily, Senate Enrolled Act 1 is going to increase that non-collection by another $500,000. So in simple terms, let's see what that does to your net property tax, what you should collect. I said in 2025, you will likely collect 8.4 million. That actually goes down in 2026 by 162,000. So you're not going to collect as much property tax as you're collecting right now, even with the 4% growth. Because remember, I started out by saying you're going to get 4% growth. That's 4% growth on what you can levy. You'll levy that, but you won't collect all of that. In 2027, the loss does increase. Now you're up to like 1.3 million that you're not going to collect. But because there's growth built in there, overall, you should see about a $260,000 growth in overall collections. And then in 2028, it really jumps up. And that is because of the property tax relief lit falling off. So now your loss is up to 1.6 million and your collections do go up, but only by about 40,000. So it's going to be tight the next 3 years, and there's a lot of unknown things. They can go back in and start tweaking this legislation. But what we know today gives us some caution. I mean, we want to take a cautious approach to the 2026 budget. Any recurring items that you add, you just have to keep thinking, can you fund that in 2028 and beyond? Because what you do in 2026 doesn't just affect 2026. So that is important to know. Page number 6, just in case you're interested, this county has a total of $6.3 million of credits that are returned to the taxpayers. That's relatively low if you compare it to other kind of similar sized counties, but it's probably low like that. Well, for 2 reasons. Your tax rates aren't that high. Number 2 is that you do have that property tax relief local income tax. Again, that's a good thing. I don't know why they're eliminating it from the legislation because it's actually a good thing because it's good for taxpayers and it's good for you. But it is getting, at least as we know today, it's getting eliminated. If you go to page 7, this is very common throughout the state, this graph. This is what we've seen over the last 5 years. Your net assessed value, so the value of taxable property, has actually increased. So in 2022, your net assessed value was $1.185 billion. It is now at $1.5 billion. So some nice growth there. And look what it did to your tax rate. Because remember, as assessed value increases, that doesn't translate to an increase in the property tax revenue. You're capped at what revenue you can receive. But what it serves to do is it reduces the tax rate. That's what we want to see. So your tax rate in 2022 was 0.6830, so 68 cents. It's now at 60 cents in 2025. But with this new legislation, we're going to start seeing that go back up because I think that your net assessed value, it may not decline, but you're not going to have the growth that you've seen in the past. So here we go. We're going to do the opposite thing. And now just for some general observations as we went through this process, we always tell you what your options are. You probably already know a lot of these options, but I'm going to tell you what you have as options. So this county does not have a cumulative capital development fund. That is a great fund to have because it's outside those levy limits I talked about. So, your levy limit right now is like 8 million. You can go above that and collect additional property tax dollars if you establish a cumulative capital development fund. The maximum rate on that fund is 0.0333, not a very large rate. If you would establish that, you could generate on an annual basis $438,000 annually. And that's net of circuit breakers. So that's actual money that you would collect, new money. There is a short window of opportunity to adopt this CCD fund. It's from January 1st through the end of May in any given year for the next taxable year. So it's too late for 2026. But if you're interested in this, you could do it like the first quarter of next year for 2027. The Cumulative Capital Development Fund can be used for pretty much any capital purpose, including making payments on bond issues. So again, that's a good, I would say most of the counties in the state, I know this to be a fact, most of the counties in the state have a CCD fund. There's only a few counties left that do not have this fund. County wheel tax, you do have a county wheel tax, but it's not at the maximum rate. So right now, I don't know what rate it's at. I was not able to find that, but you currently collect about $735,000 annually on the wheel tax. If you went to the maximum rate, you could generate 1.8 million. So you could more than double that. And that really is just can be used for anything that the Motor Vehicle Highway Fund can currently be used for. So road projects, equipment, salaries. Page number 8 is a chart that shows your actual and estimated ending cash balances for your major operating funds. So this is not all the funds of the county, it's just your major operating funds. And in that paragraph at the top, I list out the funds. I'm not going to read all those to you, but you've had very strong cash balances, which is great. We've had these dotted lines are what we call guardrails. So the dotted red line is where we don't want you to fall below. And that is 15%. We don't want you to have an ending cash balance in your major funds that is less than 15% of your disbursements, because that's only 2.5 months of reserves. So you don't want to be less than that. The dotted green line is 50% or 6 months of reserves. That's usually what you need to operate. You can have more than that, but if you're in between there, that means you've got some good, strong stability. And you have been above the 50% reserve. We are estimating, though, with some of these changes in Senate Enrolled Act 1, that could decline going into 2028. We would hope that it could perhaps level out if you adopt the 1.2% local income tax. If you adopt something lower than that and don't make permanent reductions to your budget, it's probably going to continue to decline. The next thing I want to do is just go straight to the general fund cash flow on page 13. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, and then I'm going to go pretty quickly through the other cash flows, unless you stop me with questions. So the general fund is on 2 pages because there's just a lot of lines, but we've highlighted the lines that I think you're going to be most interested in. Page 13 and 14, but I'm going to start on page 13. So this is your general fund. This is obviously the most important fund of the county. It serves to fund many, many services for the county. So we've got an index numbering system on the left-hand side of this handout because I'm going to kind of point out some lines that I want you to see. So up at the top, that line 4 is the impact from Senate Enrolled Act 1 2025 for this fund. So if you look starting in 2026, general fund is impacted by a negative 404,000, 2027, 465,000, 2028, it bumps up again because that property tax relief, local income tax goes away. So that goes up to 671,000. If you look at line 7, that's your net property tax. So that's what we expect that you will actually collect. There's some history here. You can see what you've collected in 22, 23, 24. It's been about 6.8 million. 2025, probably 6.9 million. but now it goes down. So like we're going backwards. 2026, 6.8 million, and then a little bit of a bump. And then it could potentially go back down in 2028 once we get to the bigger circuit breaker impact. So line 19, it's highlighted in blue. This is a very important line. These are your total operating receipts. And why it's so important is because we encourage you to balance your expenditures with your receipts. It's just like at home. If you spend more than the paychecks that you bring in, you're going to dip into your savings account, or you're going to be using credit cards or getting loans. If your budget exceeds your receipts here, you're going to burn down your cash reserves, and it's not a sustainable budget. Now, cash reserves are very good for one-time purchases like capital outlays. Cash reserves are not good for funding salaries and wages, raises, any type of recurring cost. So if you jump down to line 30, we do have what you're proposing right now as your budget. I know it's very early in the budget process, but if you look under 2026 on line 30, your budget right now as it currently stands is $14,629,876. You do have some capital outlays. If you look on line 25, there is almost 900,000 in capital outlays. So that's fine. That can be utilized that can be funded out of your cash reserve. So right now you're out of balance by, I can't do the math in my head. Let's see, about 800,000. Because if you look at line 32, net operating receipts, that tells me how you're out of balance, because I'm saying that your revenues are 12.9, your expenses are 14.6, you're out of balance by 1.7, but 900,000 of that is capital. So just letting you know where you're at right now. I know you're not finished with the budget process. Unfortunately, we noticed in Gateway that not every fund has a budget yet, again, because it's preliminary. So not every one of these schedules will necessarily have your 2026 budget, but this one does, the general fund. And again, just the way it stands now. An additional item I would like to point out is on line 14, LIT, the local income tax county services. We built in the 1.2%. That'll just have to be a decision that you make later. But if you look on line 13, your local income tax certified shares, you can see what's coming in there now. You would put this county services LIT starting in 2028 in the general fund. But remember that your PSAP, your economic development, and your public safety, which is on lines 26, 27, 28, you're not going to have those funds anymore. So you're going to have to take whatever you're spending out of those funds now and push them into general. So it looks like, oh, wow, we've gotten 2.4 million in the past for LIT LIT certified shares. We can go up to 9.2 million. Well, yes, but now you've got to shift some costs from these other funds into here. So let's flip to page 14. So if you go, let's stay on 2028. So on 2028, on line 42, it says change in fund balance. If change in fund balance is a positive number, you're adding to your cash reserves. If it's a negative number, you're taking away from your cash reserves. You've been fortunate enough to be able to add to your cash reserves over the last 3 years. Now, there's various reasons why. One of them is because you've gotten supplemental local income tax distributions that we can't depend on. That's just like extra money. You don't know about it until May. And then your circuit breaker credits have fluctuated a little bit. So that's helped as well. And you've underspent your budget in some cases. But regardless, you have not outspent your receipts. Line 45 is ending cash. So in 2024, your ending cash was at the 9.9 million for the general fund. So good, strong cash reserves there. You do have reserves that you can use for one-time capital outlays. 2025, as your budget stands now, and as we estimated revenues, you will likely utilize about $518,000 of cash if you spent your whole entire budget. And then 2026, if you don't change your budget, you'll utilize about 1.7 million. Again, part of that was capital. So really, you're out of balance by about 675,000 if you know that you want to use your reserves for capital. 2027, it gets a little worse, and we just build in a 3% cost of living increase in your 2027 budget. So that's kind of how this works. But in 2028, it kind of reverses itself. But again, that's counting on that maximum rate on the local income tax. So that was a lot of information. Do you have any questions for me before I start really speeding through here? Okay. All right. I'm not going to go through every chart, but I'm going to show you this one chart for the general fund. Again, it has the guardrails, but now it's by fund. So we have the dotted red line is the 15% reserve where we don't want you to fall below. Dotted green line, 50% 6-month reserve. You've been above that. And we're even showing that even after Senate Enrolled Act 1, if you pass the lit, you should be right where you need to be for this fund. Page 16. Now I'm just going to focus on 2026 since we're in the budget season. So page 16 under 2026, line 13, total operating receipts. This is your health fund. So we're estimating receipts of about 421,000. Your budget right now is considerably more than that, but it's really due to the fact that you have some capital. There's like $400,000 of capital in there. So if we consider that, then this budget is out of balance by about 106,000. But I will say this too, that you've got a lot of cash reserves in here, almost, I'm going to say too much. Look at the end of 2024, 328%. You don't need that much in cash reserves in a health fund. You don't. So what Baker Tilly usually recommends is either you reduce the levy on this fund. You can even take the levy off this fund temporarily and shift it over to general, or just let the cash reserves burn down until you need to put more levy in here, because that's too much cash reserves in this fund. So that's the health fund. I do see that we continued out the capital. I don't think you're going to have capital every year, so I'm going to change that for the next version. In 27 and 28, unless this is going to be a recurring capital cost every year, I don't think that's going to be the case. So next page is page 18, local road and street. So here we have, you only get one type of revenue, and that's on line 2, and this is gas tax, part of the gas tax. So local road and street distribution. Your revenue is projected to be $638,000 in 2026. Your budget right now is sitting at $663,000, but a lot of that is capital. So really, this is an okay budget. If you let this pass, it's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this budget. You've got nice reserves in there. Page 20 is the lit public safety. So remember, this revenue source is going away in 2028. That's why when you look at the 2028 column, there's nothing going on there. But you are paying for things out of this fund, almost $1 million. So whatever you're paying for here, you would either have to permanently cut, which that's not going to happen, or you've got to shift this is going to be additional expenses for general starting in 2028. So the revenue coming in for 2026 and 2027 is about 1.2 million. I don't think this is a budget that you currently have. This might be the 3% growth that we worked in. I should have made note of this, but right now I have a budget of 929,000, but for some reason I'm thinking you don't have that firmed up yet. So that's actually, you could spend the full 1.2. That's where, your budget could be if you needed it to be the full 1.2 million. Moving on to page 2022. This is your highway fund, and this is the unrestricted highway fund, because remember, you have two funds. One is a non-restricted and one is a restricted. And the reason why you have to have two funds is because that gas tax that comes into the county, 50% of it has to go into restricted and 50% in unrestricted. So this is your unrestricted fund. Your revenues that we're anticipating for 2026 on line 5 is 2.1 million. The budget as it stands now is considerably higher at 2.875 million. I did notice though that you don't have a restricted budget yet, so it's possible there could be some restricted budget items in here that just need to be shifted over. I'm sorry. Yes, I said that right. There could be some restricted items in here that can be shifted over to the restricted fund. You do have some capital in here as well, but that would be spending down those reserves pretty significantly. If this budget were to stand just all in this non-restricted fund, it looks like you'd spend down about 770,000. So that would put you below that 15% reserve. So just letting you know that. I'm thinking though there's probably some restricted items that can be shifted over. It kind of makes it difficult in the Gateway budget program, the state budget program. The state combines both of these funds, restricted and unrestricted. So in the Gateway program, it probably looks like this is all funded. But really, just to let you know, it is two separate funds on your books. So you just need to make sure that it is fully funded. Page 24 is the statewide 911 fund. You're similar to a lot of counties. You're just not getting those receipts that you need to fund your dispatch. And I'm assuming that's why you adopted the LIT or the PSAP, the dispatch. So in 2026 on line 2, we're expecting that you'll get about 531,000. These revenues don't change that much. And if anything, sometimes they come down. But your budget has been a lot higher than that. We didn't have a budget. I didn't see one in Gateway for this fund, but if you just look at 2024, your expenditures were 770,000 the year before, 800,000, but you're only getting about 530,000. So you do have that lit PSAP that you can use to bridge this gap. We put in a budget adjustment on line 9 just to make this work. And also to show you that there's probably going to be about 400-some thousand of expenditures that will be budgeted that you'll need to pay someplace else. You may not have to cut it, but you may have to switch it over to the PSAP fund or even the general fund because you can't fund 800,000 out of this statewide 911 fund. Any questions about that? Page 26 is your reassessment fund. I didn't see a budget for that one either. So if you look at 2026, though, you can at least see the revenue that we're anticipating. It's about 376,000. So that's probably where your budget needs to be. This budget you're seeing here on line 19 is just the 3% growth budget that we carried forward. This is another fund that, in my opinion, has too much money in it. You can, as a council, take the levy off this fund for a year or two and push it over to general just to burn down the cash reserves. Because at the end of 2024, it had 931,000. It doesn't need that much fund balance. I mean, and the budget can still be funded. It's not like we're taking money away from reassessment. Those budgets can still be funded. It's just what's sitting in reserves is really too much. Page 28 is Riverboat. You haven't been spending out of this, which is totally fine. You don't get a whole lot into this fund. It's about 127,000, but you have cash reserves in this fund that you could use for one-time capital expenditures if you needed to. At the end of 2024, you had almost 1.1 million. So that'd be good for some equipment or vehicles or whatever you might need. Page 30 is another kind of dispatch fund. What you're getting in here, I think, is from the city of Peru, if I remember correctly. And that's why you have to segregate it in a separate fund. This one is just a little bit out of balance. And again, this isn't even your budget yet, I don't think. I don't think I found this one in here. Or no, I did. 136,000 is your budget. You're getting in about 125,000. It's just a little bit out of balance. There's plenty of reserves to cover that, so really not an issue there. Thank you for staying with me. Page 32 is your local income tax economic development. So here's another lit fund that's going to go away starting in 2028. Your expenditures have varied in this fund, and I don't think you're done with 2026 yet. We're just showing 721,000. I think there's going to be more, and I'm just basing that on history. You spend about anywhere from 1.2 to 1.4 out of this fund. You get in more than that, but there are transfers that are being made out, and I believe that's for a debt service, and that's on line 22. So there's monies going in and out of this fund. This is not unusual. An edit fund like this, or local income tax economic development fund, it's usually project driven, or it is being utilized for debt service, etc. I just want you to know that the receipts that you bring in are about $4 million. You, starting in 2028, are not going to be able to spend $4 million because in our cash flows, we just shifted what you've spent on average, which is 1.2 million to the general fund. If I thought that you're going to spend 4 million, now you're way out of balance in general. So, you've been spending again about 1.2 or so million. I mean, I think you can afford that in 2028, but you got to go to the maximum local income tax rate to afford that. Page 34 is your lit special purpose, and this is being utilized to fund some lease rental bonds that you have outstanding right now. They mature in 2033. This fund does not go away, so don't have concerns right now, at least. It's still in the statute. It doesn't go away. You're going to have enough to cover your annual debt service, which is over $1 million, and then also some other items as well. You get about 2 million a year into this fund, but it covers what it needs to cover. Page 36 is your wheel tax fund. And this one, you're not at the maximum rate. So you get about 734,000 annually. That's what we're anticipating for 2026. You have a budget in 2025 of 975,000. I don't know for sure what it is for 2026. I think this is just the 3% growth. So you can't continue to sustain a $975,000 budget in this fund unless you increase the wheel tax. So that's just a thought, something to throw out there. Wheel tax can be adopted each year by September 1st for implementation the following year. So it's just something, I don't know that it's critical that you adopt it right away or increase the rate right away. But again, if you need to sustain $1 million budget, you're probably going to need to increase that wheel tax rate. And the wheel tax at the maximum would generate 1.8. You may not even need that maximum rate to fund this budget. Page 38 is your rainy day fund. We don't recommend that you budget this fund. You can additionally appropriate out of it as you need it, but really you want to kind of just keep this for emergencies. It's supposed to be utilized for rainy days, emergencies. So we wouldn't recommend that you budget it. We're getting close to the end, I promise. Page 39 is the motor vehicle highway restricted. So this is the restricted fund. You don't currently have a budget, but we put in about a $2 million budget going forward because that's about what you've spent in the past. That's on average what you've spent. You get about 2.1 million in this fund. Sometimes it's difficult to spend this money because it can only be used for construction, reconstruction, and preservation of roads. You can only use it for salaries if you can tie the salaries to specific projects. That's the hard part. But you guys have done a great job utilizing this fund because you haven't even used it for salaries. And I think that's the hardest part. You've been able to find $2 million of highway expenses that you're allowed to use in this fund. Page 41 is your cumulative courthouse fund. This is a rate capped fund, and so it only goes up as the assessed value goes up. So in 2026, we expect that you will have about 544,000 in revenue. You can over budget this fund if you need to, because usually it's for projects like one-time expenditures. So the budget that's in there right now is fine. You've got cash reserves, a little bit of cash reserves if you need to use it for one-time expenditures. Cumulative bridge, also a rate-driven fund. You have a tax rate of like 0.02 on this fund right now. And counties always ask me, well, we have a lot of bridge projects. Can we increase the rate on this fund? You can, but the problem is you'll have to reduce the rate on health, reassessment, or general because it's under that levy limit that you have. So it's not going to be helpful to increase the rate. So you generate about 534,000. Your budget sometimes is a little bit higher than that. Again, this is usually a project-driven fund. Just make sure that you're not spending down your cash reserves at too low of a level. There. And that's fine. And that's really the end. The rest of these schedules are just supplemental schedules that you can look through at your leisure. We've got some comparative data for other counties that's similar to you. So, are there any questions? Did I just completely confuse you or bore you, but you just leave?
It's a lot to think about.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
I'm sure.
Yes.
But I think these are really good reports to continue to update because, like, if people come in and ask you for an additional appropriation, you can see what kind of reserves you have and if you can fund those additionals. That's one thing, but these are a great tool for the budget season because we've already estimated all of your revenues. We know where your budget should be, as I pointed out as I went through here. So as you deliberate more on the budgets, you can, you know where you need to be to have a balanced budget.
Would it be possible that we could post this on the website? I think this would be good to have available, if that's possible, under the county council website, but I think it'd be good to publish that, make it available for folks if they want to have some good evening reading.
Send it to Jim.
You were talking about the seated. You guys need to, there's two different seededs that are all combined. So keep that in mind when she was talking about the seeded. There's seeded economic development and seeded shares, and it's all combined into one. Keep that in mind. And then on the health, there is a significant balance in there, and that was built up because a bunch of their grants are probably going to be going away.
And I believe some conversations, there's a capital purchase they want to make next year using some leftover COVID money.
Yeah.
That is a one-time expense during the budget committee meeting. So
Thanks, Mary.
Just
Thank
a little
you.
bit.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Thank you. I appreciate your
thank you.
time.
Paige, you also mentioned in the first time you did this about making the budgets real and not doing the appropriations at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I could speak to that for a second. So we strongly encourage that you have really accurate budgets because if the budgets are inflated, it's hard to manage them and to be able to tell what you can really afford. Like at times when you're trying to give raises, if it's inflated, you might ask me, your financial advisor, can we afford these raises? And if on paper, it may look like you can't because it may be inflated. I'm sure, let me look to see, there is a schedule back here. So here's the rule of thumb. We say that you should be spending about 90 to 100% of your budgets. That's an accurate budget to me. In fact, the closer to 100% you are, the better. And additional appropriations are for the times when you need to go above the budget. I know additional appropriation process, it's a cumbersome process sometimes. But that is how you go above the budget and really manage your budget so you have an accurate budget. So on page 48, we have, budget to actual. So in 2024, in general, anyway, you spent 94% of what you budgeted. That tells me you have a pretty tight budget. That's a good budget. But in 2023, you only spent 87%. So I don't know what was going on there. But again, I would say try to be as accurate as possible. I have some counties that underspend their budget by 80% or 20%. I'm sorry, they only spend 80% of their budget. And they're always so proud of that. I'm like, on paper, I can't tell where you are because your budget is so inflated. To me, it looks like you're burning down all this cash, but in reality, you're not even going to spend all of that. So again, that's just our recommendation. You really want to have accurate budgets because it's way easier to manage.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate
You
it.
want me to stick around?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to really get this.
Yes, yes, yes. Next on the agenda is the Southern Miami County Fire Territory study.
Yeah, so this is going to be a request to advertise. We've been talking with Paige at Baker Tilly. I know that there's been some discussion on a lot of the economic development activity that's happened, especially in the Pipe Creek area. And there has been a discussion around how to fund fire services, which is a service that is required to be funded from the townships, and that there's been so much economic development activity. How could a capital plan be put together? So I did some checking and some asking around, talked with Pipe Creek and the 4 townships that make up the Pipe Creek Volunteer Fire District. About, apparently they've been discussing for some time the potential to put together a fire territory or a fire district. And so worked with Paige on this proposal. What I'm proposing and what I'm asking is that the county use some of our economic development funds to help fund this study for them, just to do the analysis of what it would be to form either a fire territory or a district for the Pipe Creek as scenario 1. Scenario 2 would be all of South County. County Council has no ability to execute on this, and I'm very well aware of that. This would be just helping them put together the analysis. If they want to move forward, the townships have to make that decision for themselves. That is nothing that this body can do because of the expense. And I believe this is a not to exceed. If you look at the proposal on page 3, what we're basically, my ask is just for service A. So that is to look at the budget, funding, and taxpayer impact. So that would be a not to exceed $12,000. So the council cannot enter into an agreement. So the ask would be at the next meeting that we appropriate $12,000 from Lit Economic Development to be able to cover that for the townships. And again, this is just seeing, if they were to form one of those, could they even fund it? And could that be put together? So really, how can we help our townships, as they're looking at a lot of what Paige just rolled out of, increase in cost, increase in needs, and how they're going to be able to fund those things moving forward. So my request is to be able to advertise for that. And again, asking if the council would be open to appropriating $12,000 from economic development to be able to fund that. So
I'll put a motion to advertise.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, great. Any other questions for Brad? Please
Yeah.
vote. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, this would be, the township assessor, or I'm sorry, the township trustees. I met with them. They're in full support, and they would work with Paige on this. We're just mainly just helping them fund this study. So, yep.
And do
Right.
you know offhand how Grissom helps out in these townships? How often?
So the Grissom Fire Department, you would have to hold me accountable by talking to Matt Chilcutt. I believe technically Grissom does not have to leave the confines of the Air Force Base. I know that they will if on certain occasions of mutual aid, but I believe they are not required to, nor do they have to show up outside of the Air Force Base.
Mhm.
So, but Matt could talk way more intelligently than I could on that. So,
Can you describe fire territory, please?
So there's a territory and a district page.
Do you want me to
Yeah,
come
you
back
can.
up?
You're more eloquent than I can.
Want me to come here?
Sure. Whatever. You have a full PowerPoint for us, sir?
Yeah.
I have it on my computer out in the car. So a fire territory is when two taxing entities, at least two taxing entities that touch boundaries come together to form a territory. There can be more than two, but they all have to have boundaries that touch. Those fire territories can be established by those entities, like two townships or a township and a town, can just be established by those entities and they have control over it. A fire district is established by the county commissioners, and the control, like the budgetary control, is the county council. So it's very different as to who controls it. Another differing aspect is that a fire district is a completely separate legal entity. So, like a township's a separate entity, a library, a county, a municipality. A fire district is completely separate. A fire territory is a component of one of the entities that forms it. It's like a department of one of the entities that forms it.
And I believe there's a rate implication to both
There
of those
is.
as well.
There is. So fire territories recently in this 2025 legislative session, fire territories are capped at 40 cents. There's a rate cap. This is the first time in all the years I've seen that. Fire districts don't have a rate cap, but the initial property tax levy has to be set based on whatever the needs are of that district at that time.
So the district would give the ability for, I would use the word local control, but is capped at a certain rate.
The territory.
Territory is a district would flip to the county,
Mhm.
but there's a higher rate. So
Yes. Yeah.
that's why these studies are important, is to figure out the amount of money that's being requested, which one of those directions. And there's a trade-off. If you want if you need more of a rate, then the county becomes the controlling body. If you can raise the funds needed, you can have local control. So that's why this is a important exercise to go through. So there's pros and cons to both of those. Again, those townships would have to make a decision on how they want to move forward.
So they all have to agree.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So if one pulls out, then that's it.
Yeah. Now, to Paige's point, when we were talking through this, I mean, this does not mean that you're forming a new fire department.
Right.
But two townships could go together and establish this rate. That doesn't make maybe managerial sense, but it doesn't have to be all of them, but it makes sense in our cases, which is why we suggested following the existing boundaries. So it would be a different funding mechanism. So instead of Pipe Creek Volunteer having a separate contract with all 4 townships, they would just have a contract with this district. The board of the district, which would probably be the township trustees, would then set that rate, and it would be much like it is in Peru Township, where there's a separate taxing line item, and that money all goes to pay for that district. The district decides how to disperse that
That's
out.
on every acre of farm ground too.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, it's
On the
every
whole
parcel.
taxable property.
Yep. And so part of this study is, are the 4 townships enough, honestly, to cover that, or do you have to go to a bigger area to be able to provide that amount of income
Yeah.
that's being requested? When talking to Matt, and I know Mr. Horner is here too. I mean, the cost of equipment right now is astronomical, and some of the departments are struggling with how they're going to even buy a new or even a used truck to be able to service some of these areas. So with the current, because the townships are under some of this levy pressure, just like we are, and so they just can't raise a rate willy-nilly to generate income. So did that answer your question, Elaine?
Oh. Thanks, Paige.
Thank you.
All right.
So
next-
we haven't.
Oh, yes, we have a motion and a second, so we need to vote, please.
What's the motion?
The motion is to advertise for $12,000 appropriation from CEDAT
Okay,
to be able to cover the cost of the study.
okay, just advertise.
Just
Yes,
advertise.
this is
Yeah.
advertised.
Yep.
Okay, so please
Aye.
vote.
Aye.
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 Great, motion carried. Thank you. All right, next under council discussion committee report is just a reminder of our budget workshops will be August 26th, 27th, and 28th. Okay. And we'll be moving the October meeting to October 14th because there is a Founders Conference. Yeah, so we will be moving it to October 14th. That'll be advertised. And next, do we have any council discussion on any committees reports that anybody wants to talk about before I go to this last one? Okay. I know that Elaine, you brought up about the Grissom Aeroplex, the mowing and lack of it. Yes. So I know at first, and that was last month, they were having some issues with their mower. So it's and what they said here, they spend about $50,000 a year for ground maintenance on the properties. And depending on some of the properties, they are mowed once every 7 to 10 days, some twice per month, or some once a month. The former Grissom Hotel, which is, as we have discussed earlier, is owned by a company out of Florida. The county has made numerous attempts to contact the owner, but because of the unsafe condition, no results. So that is the reason for that. The former Officers Club, it's owned by a retired individual, which is the Villages in Florida. And then there's 29 acres between Lancer and Matador near the Grissom Church of Christ and the golf course, which are owned by a company out of West Lafayette. So they notify these owners of the violations of covenants and development standards. The process includes sending a violation notices of no response. Then we do have they have the contractor mow the property, and then they send an owner an invoice. And of course, should the owner not reimburse Makita for the mowing, then they place lien on the property, which will probably they'll never recover. So there is a process on some of those properties that are not mowed. And like I said earlier, the bush hog was being repaired. It's repaired now. And so that is why it kind of got a little bit out of control. And it's a constant battle with those 3 property owners. But it's, they go through the process.
What did you say they spend on mowing?
You what, huh?
How much do they spend on mowing?
$50,000 a year for ground maintenance for the properties that they own.
Okay, because again, they got 119,000 in their TIF report that they spend for that.
Okay.
So something's not adding up.
Well, that's depending on location. Like I said, things vary.
Problem has been going on all
You what, huh?
year. This problem has been going on since spring. If they say they mow every week?
It's every 7 to 10 days, some twice a month, or some once a month.
I'm sorry, that hasn't occurred. You know?
Sandy, I think what Elaine's talking about is right along the bypass where the Shell buildings,
Oh, that was another area. Yes.
and those bushes are 5 foot tall, more or less. And it doesn't take a month for a tree to grow 4 foot. Now, something got left behind long before spring.
I'm not talking about along 31,
But-
I'm talking about in the complex.
Yeah,
Drive
this is-
around, just take a trip out there and drive around.
Yes, but I'm talking about along the bypass. Now, if they build the Shell buildings and rent them out, well, that's a poor excuse for showing if somebody was going to build another building, along there, and I call it brush, because it's more than one bush. It's like 50 to 100 bushes out there.
Okay. So I will check on.
It's very, very poorly maintained. And this is not something that's been going on for years, but it's been going on this year. So I don't know who, Makita's in charge of this. Is that Jim Tibbs'
Of the
responsibility?
Aeroplex of the properties that they own. The properties they don't own, of course, they go through the process that I talked about. So
They own, they're not maintained.
have you driven by there lately? I mean, it's like I said, they had trouble earlier in July, but
I was out there right after the council meeting. I noticed.
yeah, that
Immediately somebody did something, but they had a bush hog that just went around the shrubs that have grown up, and those shrubs are only going to be bigger and bigger next year if we don't get them cut down and, killed.
okay. I'll talk to them again.
It looks like a mess out there. I don't
Okay.
know why any developer would want to build it.
I will let them know your
It's an
concern.
eyesore.
That's Brad.
That's
Oh,
what I.
that's Brad.
Okay. Okay. Next on the agenda, public comment. Do you have anyone in the audience that'd like to say anything? Everyone wants to go home, don't they? Next on the agenda is adjournment.
Motion.
Okay, second.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Don't we have to sign something?
Yeah, we
Sign
do.
that.
Annette.
That's the longest.